All right, welcome back to Snap Publishing, where we talk about Edward Leedskalnin's Coral Castle and how it pertains to the periodic table, the zodiac, and DNA. All right, so we left off on the first episode talking about the fine structure constant and how that translates into Father, Son, and Spirit. And you have to be careful with the spirit because there's two types. And, you have two ends of the Temple of Solomon. You have the Holy of Holies, and then you have the outer court. And you hear about this character, this biblical character, Queen A the liar, or Athaliah. And that's what that represents. A, that means pyramid. That's Queen's chamber. A the liar. So in a lyre, a lyre, a harp is another metaphor for a female lower extremity. And then, like you read in the book of Daniel, where Nebuchadnezzar wanted everyone to bow down when they heard the music playing. And it talks about the flute, the harp. Well, what do you think a flute represents? It's the opposite of a harp, playing the flute. So people miss these metaphors and they think, oh, that ain't what that is. That is exactly what that is. So once you realize that this place, this thing that Nebuchadnezzar wanted people to worship, it's talking about black tantric practices where people are thinking with their lower extremities. They're thinking with their lower functions. Okay, they're not thinking in the Holy of Holies. They're outside the outer court. But anyway, tree of the knowledge of good and evil, positive and negative. You could say the tree of the knowledge of gravity and energy. Okay, west and east. That is the, you're saying the same thing different ways. When you look at the zodiac or the Cartesian coordinates, that is a biblical way of saying the same thing they're saying scientifically and mathematically today. It's all in the ancient text, but it's said in a archaic, poetic way that we have since lost the meaning of. Okay? Okay. This is a very interesting part of the movie. All right? Digital rain in the Matrix. You see the three screens in front of Cypher, and the code's coming down, and Neo sneaks up on him and asks him questions about the Matrix and the code. And according to the making of the movie, that is actually Japanese. It's a recipe for sushi. And you say, man, that's kind of strange. If you understand the whole biblical narrative and how Solomon's temple is the temple of Dagon, okay? When you're looking at it from a pure alpha male, pig-headed, alpha male only, patriarchy, tyrannical king version, that's the temple of Gonad or Dagon. And Dagon was said to be part man, part fish. He was like a mermaid, but a merman. Okay, and all the experts, they say, oh, that's not what it was. Yes, it is. All right, you can look at the Sumerian texts, and they have they have pictures of this fish god, and that's what it is. It's Dagon. And Dagon, if you rearrange the letters, it means gonad. There's no other way to pussyfoot around this, pun intended. So when you get into why would the creator of this movie sneak that in? Because you read about Ahasuerus in the book of Esther. His palace was called Shushan, which means lily, the palace of lilies. Okay? And lilies comes up a lot, especially in the Song of Solomon. And Jesus said, consider the lilies, for they spin and toil not. And lilies are the 3, 6, and 9 of Nikola Tesla, and also the Star of David, triangle up, triangle down, put them together, you get the Star of David. And they're the only straight things in the universe. They never deviate. They don't bend with space. So they technically represent probably time as opposed to space, which is curved. So anyway, this Shushan sounds a lot like sushi, don't it? And the fact that this represents the temple of Dagon, it all kind of makes sense when you think about it. You say, well, that's kind of a stretch. No, it ain't. Once you realize, like I said, this book, they're very, Mr. Vogler is very specific. He said, listen, guys, it's not rocket science. You either follow this pattern or you don't get a script in Hollywood. You either follow this pattern or you can't write a rock and roll song. You will not write a dance hip hop song. You have to have a very basic outline to work off of. These very complex songs boiled down. You reverse engineer these songs, they come down to a very basic structure. And they all exist in that periodic table, doubled in the image of Solomon's temple. It's all contained on the center line of your body. Okay? The 3, 6, and 9, pineal or third eye, and then your heart, and then your groin. Okay, that's your 3 down here, 6 is chest, 9 is up here. Okay? And unless you're not living for God and you're doing the Black Tantra thing, then you're thinking with this down here. So you're upside down. So I've already covered that in other episodes. We weren't going to go off on a tangent there, but Samuel chapter 5 verse 4 gets into Dagon, okay? And that can also mean Draco, the star system known as Draco, which used to be our pole star, by the way. And let's see. You get into the compartments of the temple, and I've already talked about the shewbread, okay, SHEW. The EW is east-west. So the S and the EW is southeast-west, okay? And that gets into Jesus saying the toil and the spin. I want to go off on a tangent there. And you got near the shewbread in the main atrium, the holy place, you had the ATGC. ATGC was in Solomon's temple. Yeah, the almond tree golden candlestick. I don't know how we missed it, but it was there the whole time. That's why you say, wasn't it weird that they called it a candlestick when it was actually an oil lamp? Gee, I wonder why they did that. Because it's AT, an almond tree, that's a golden candlestick. Okay, if they called it a lamp, it wouldn't have had a ring to it. But it was called a candlestick. Okay, and you say, well, that's got an S. That's a CS. Quiet. You can take the butcher's word for it, or you can shove your head up the cow's ass. I don't care what you do. But ATGC was found in the Bible a long time ago. And I know that's a mind blower for a lot of people, but trust me. There's so many references to sugar phosphate and the 3 and the 5, sugar phosphate backbone, the ATGC. Alexander the Great was a conqueror. That's another version. But we've already covered that in a previous episode. But anyway, Matrix begins where it ends. Room 303. That's the groin. That's the 3 and the 3. If you see these people that follow Aleister Crowley and he's standing like this, posing with a pyramid on his head, those are coils. Those represent, you look at a modern transformer, step down coil, there's a high voltage side and a low voltage side. Taking the 13,800 volts in here and putting it out 12240 here. Those are coils. That's what he's saying. This is the 33, right? And they say 33 vertebrae in our backbone, which, by the way, if you look where Neo worked, the skyscraper was shaped like a human spine. So, movie begins where it ends, room 303. Starts out with Trinity in there, having to flee for her life. And then it ends with Neo taking one initially to the chest, and then he got shot supposedly 13 more times, so a total of 14. That's supposed to be, according to Neil deGrasse Tyson, the 14 stations of Jesus' cross, according to the Roman Catholic tradition. I will tell you differently. Does it pertain to that? Yeah, it is kind of tied into that, but in a better way, and you notice it when you get into Cypher's computer station. There's 7 computer screens down on the bottom, and they represent the 7 spirits of God. They also represent Morpheus's crew. Okay, so you got Neo and Trinity, Dozer, Tank, Mouse. That's 5, and then Cypher and hang on. Neo, Trinity, might not have Neo. Let me see. Neo, Trinity, Dozer, Tank. 5 would be Cypher. All right, so that would put us too many. So you got to eliminate. Got to get rid of Neo. Neo's not in there. It would be before Neo showed up. It would be Trinity, Dozer, Tank, Mouse. 5 would be Cypher, and there's a reason I say Cypher's 5. And then you got the other 2 are Switch and APOC. So those are the 7 spirits, okay? And the reason I say 5 is important is when Neo comes up behind him and scares the bejesus out of him, you notice he shuts off that screen. So his goes black. He kills that. Then 1 second or 2 seconds go by, it's back on. Okay, so there's a reason Cypher did that. He's taking himself out of the network because he was about to betray everybody. So he's representing a type of Judas. By the way, Morpheus represents Moses. Moses' name means drawn from water. And Morpheus also represents John the Baptist. Okay, so I'm just throwing that out there for you. He represents more than just one biblical character. And when Mr. Smith interrogates Neo, and that's when they install the device into his stomach, he says Morpheus is considered by many to be the most dangerous man that ever lived. It's talking about Moses, okay? But not just Moses, because Moses is connected to John the Baptist, but he's also connected to Enoch. Okay, so when you get into this Luciferian doctrine that says, oh, Lucifer wasn't such a bad guy, time out. They're meshing several different biblical things that are going on, and they're saying that this character is this character cleverly disguised. No. Lucifer is his own thing, okay? If anybody comes out of that era, it's Enoch and Adam. Adam after he received forgiveness and was clothed with the animal skins, okay? That has nothing to do with Lucifer. It's a totally separate animal altogether, okay? So you have to realize how clever these people are. And these secret societies telling their believers, and these are very powerful people working behind the scenes in modern day politics. They actually believe, oh yeah, Jesus and the devil are the same dude. God and the devil, no. Wrong. Very interesting thing about Neo is, first of all, he was not the one. He was just another potential, according to the priestess in the Oracle's apartment, the woman that greeted Morpheus and Neo. She was called the priestess. She said, just sit here and make yourself comfortable among the other potentials. Neo had to realize his potential to become the one. He had to give his life, in other words. So that's another little sliding in of a little bit of Luciferian doctrine, in my opinion. Very subtle, but not quite as blatant as the earlier um, blendings, but little bit in there. So anyway, Neo was actually, he had a fear of heights. You remember? He was afraid to go outside the window and go onto the scaffolding. So Neo is a type of Ahithophel. 2 Samuel chapter 15, verse 12, and 2 Samuel chapter 17, verse 23. Ahithophel is a very interesting character in the Bible. And Ahithophel, this is why I say they're kind of blending Neo, saying, oh, Jesus is kind of, he's the devil, he's Lucifer. No, but they're alluding to that Ahithophel means I hate to fail. And his antithesis is Hushai or Hushai the Archite. Now, this is why I tell you got to know the biblical storyline. If Neo is anybody, he's Hushai the Archite. He's not Ahithophel. But they slipped that in there in the movie plot. But I see you. I see what you're doing there. So I just want to point that out. Whenever you see in the Bible, talks about a she bear robbed of her cubs, that's actually the tilt of the earth. Like I say, all these ancient metaphors are, what do you call it, astronomical terms. And a bear robbed of her cubs is the precession of the earth and how it messes up the clock of the zodiac, the 23.5 degree tilt of the earth. So I just want to throw that out there, little freebie for you. The matrix represents the spirituality removed from humanity. And instead of systems of today working with our circadian rhythm, like daylight savings time, it's a type of bear being robbed of her cubs. We're being robbed of our spirituality. The money markets are coming before us. The matrix is taking priority over our health. And it's also calendar manipulation throughout time. If you read about in Revelation, it talks about the Antichrist and the false prophet. They seek to change the times. That's happened several times through. It's not unique to the Antichrist or ante, which means before, someone who puts themselves before Christ. That's not a unique thing to the antichrist. It has happened throughout time. And anyone who takes the front office, that's one of the first things they're like, we're going to change everything. Change the clocks, change the money system. So that's a theme throughout humans shitting on other humans and being cruel to humans and humankind. Mr. Anderson, that is Neo's real name, Mr. Anderson, Thomas Anderson. And he's actually Alice in Wonderland. That first letter A associates him with Adam, the Great Pyramid or the Pyramid Complex, the shape of a pyramid, the letter A, and Alice in Wonderland. So, in DNA, Son of Man, when Jesus or patriarchs in the Bible are called Son of Man by God. That's technically saying the A and the DNA, deoxynucleic acid. But Mr. Smith, his name is, he's a blacksmith. He's something that comes along, God uses to forge us, to make us stronger. What doesn't kill you, make you stronger. So Mr. Smith is clearly, and his two cohorts, they're the 3, 6, and 9, but in the black tantric version. And if you take the letters of CIA, in my opinion, a little bit of warning here, C is carbon, AI, it's carbon-based life. Like the Bible says, there is a way that seemeth right unto a man, but the ways thereof are the ways of death. That biblical quote, can't remember what scripture verse and chapter that is, but when you get into Central Intelligence Agency, That really translates very well into the 3, 6, and 9. When you're talking, Mr. Smith would be the 3, Mr. Jones would be the 6 because he's jonesing, right? He's a drug addict. So that would be the human element. And then Mr. Brown would be the 9. But, and that's my professional opinion. You could slice it up any way you want. But Mr. Smith represents pure hate, okay? He's hydrogen. And like I say, hydrogen and God, they just despise carbon-based life. They try to snuff it out any chance they get. People mistake, that God is trying, our friend, no. Jesus is our intermediary between God and man. And technically, it's not Jesus anymore. Jesus sits at the right hand of the Father. And if you read in, I believe it's the Book of the Kings, talks about when Solomon's son took over, he listened to his counselors and they said, tell these people that are asking for a tax break, my father whipped you with whips, but I'm going to whip you with scorpions. People don't realize that that is the change of guard within the heavenly host. That is what Jesus did when he ascended to the throne. People are like, oh, he's our buddy now. No. He's saying in the Old Testament under Moses, I whipped you with whips. Now that you murdered me. Now I'm running my dad's business and I'm an exacting guy like my dad. He whipped you with whips. I'm going to whip you with scorpions. So once the lights turn on that, hey, we're the center position. And what did Jesus say? I leave you my comforter. The Spirit is our only hope. Unless you understand how the Spirit works, which is the, what do you call it? Out of the 4 forces, it's the weak force. So it's very difficult to understand how the weak force works. But today in this political environment, you're seeing Donald Trump use it. I've never seen any other human being use the weak force like I have Donald Trump. Not joking. I have to tip my hat to the man that his understanding in restraint is, I guess the closest you could come to it would be Joseph having the ability to crush his brothers and choosing not to. The magnitude of how he's used restraint is, I just have to say, I am in awe. I am totally in awe of the use of the weak force that Donald Trump is using. It's incredible. And I'm privileged to be alive in these times. And you should be too, once you understand the magnitude. The movie, The Holy Grail, Monty Python's Quest for the Holy Grail. Cut down that tree with a minnow. That is literally how God hands you a minnow and says, go cut that tree down. And you're like, you're kidding me, right? No, if I told you to do it, it can be done. That is how the weak force works. And that's why a lot of people lose their religion, because they realize, oh, God's not going to give me Thor's hammer to conquer all these scumbags. Nope, not going to do it. Going to give you the weak force. And you're like, you're kidding me, right? Nope. Get to it. Because if I say you can cut down a tree with a minnow, get busy. And you're standing there with this minnow flopping in your hand like, what in the hell am I going to do now? A lot of people give it up and they go, I don't want to be a Christian. If this is what I got to do. Look at World War II, how it was won. All the stories, like Hacksaw Ridge, that medic who did what he did, that's all the weak force. Look at Unbreakable, the movie about the runner who was made forced to hold that beam above his head. All those stories that you hear about of incredible feats of human, just amazing human feats of just miracles. That's the weak force. But anyway, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. Let's keep going here. So Neo was not the one. He had to become the one. Mr. Smith is known as a sentient. Okay? And the word sentient is the ability to perceive or feel. This is also Luciferian doctrine. Matter of fact, Elon Musk, not saying he did it on purpose, the Joe Rogan podcast talked about when hydrogen became sentient. Really? You're saying hydrogen became more sentient than the rest of the periodic table? Prove it. But that's what a lot of people believe. They believe that, it's the 1. No, it ain't. It's the 0.5. It's actually the 0. It's not the 1. So what is the 1? Well, 1 is obviously God. But you got Eve represents space, Adam represents time. So if you're going to say anything, God represents, it's closer to time. You take everything, that's what it is. So the hydrogen is the only thing that God is not. God can contain that, but is not part of it. That is like the blackness and the darkness and the loneliness and the sadness and the hatred. God's way out ahead of that. And it's being called God in this life by all these powerful leaders. But don't let them run you down that road, because they don't understand Scripture. They don't understand how to rightly divide the word. Because if they did, they would understand, it's the vacuum of space. Yes, it's not the 1, it's the 0. Morpheus is molybdenum. He represents Moses, Hebrew law. His girlfriend is niobium, or Niobe. So if you look on the periodic table, right, there's Niobe, there's Morpheus. And this guy over here, technetium, all right, that's Enoch. Okay. Down here, you got neodymium. Okay. His girlfriend is up here above fluorine. That's H3, which is tritium. Okay. But these 3 underneath are very interesting: uranium, protactinium, and neptunium. Okay. This is Jesus between the 2 thieves that he was hung next to. Okay. In the Greek underworld. All right. This is above the earth. This is inside the earth. All right. So these 3 down here, very interesting. It took me a long time to figure this out. But wherever there's a male version, there's always a female version. That uranium underneath Jesus is Jesus' mother. That's Mary and her cousin Elizabeth and Mary Magdalene. Mary Magdalene's one of these characters. They say, Jesus married her. He didn't really die. That's why you see this character in the Matrix sequel. His name is the Merovingian. Merovingians are people who believe that. And it comes up in the Tom Hanks movies about people believing that the royal family bloodline are the result of Jesus not really dying. And he married Mary Magdalene, the ex-prostitute, or she was still a prostitute. The real dark tantric haters, that's what they believe. They believe Jesus polluted himself with this prostitute who never converted. She converted him, in other words. Wrong. There it is again, right there in the periodic order. It tells you that, no, she stood firm with her sisters, and she came into the holy place from the outer court. She changed her life around. Okay, and there's plenty of proof to this. Don't let them take you down that road. But anyway, and that also gets into, like I say, this person in the green man, this mysterious green man with this blue-green light, that's part of it. Okay? Okay, Cypher is a type of Judas. He's jealous. Cypher is jealous of Neo. Okay, so he becomes like Judas. And so, by the way, that's this again showing itself. So if praseodymium or promethium, and Neo and promethium represent Trinity, this praseodymium, which means green jealous twin, that would be Cypher. Judas was replaced by Paul, and Paul had to have the scales removed from his eyes. The scales fell from his eyes. So that's another allegory. You say, why would the writer, the artist who created Matrix, use a sushi recipe to represent the green digital rain, which obviously is a monetary system. It's a reptilian system that has hatred towards and jealousy, green jealousy towards humankind. Okay, why would he use that? Like I say, these scales falling from Paul's eyes. It's part of that. So let's get into the staircase representing a chessboard. That gets into Mr. Anderson being Alice in Wonderland. All right, so a lot of people already know that. Neo sitting down with Morpheus. Each chair has lion heads on the armrests. Okay, and that gets into Eagle, Ox, Lion, Man. Okay, and Neo and Morpheus in that scene facing each other. You'll notice in the backdrop is the fireplace mantle, and there's a particular design to the mantle. At that point, they're two lions facing each other. They represent the two cherub whose wings were touching over the top of the Ark of the Covenant. That is what is being captured in that scene when Morpheus is giving his discourse to Neo, and they're facing each other sitting in those chairs. Okay? And let's go down to the data plate of the Nebuchadnezzar. It does not say made in USA. It says made in USA, and there's an I in there. Okay? Its number designation is a Bible scripture, most likely. It's Mark chapter 3, verse 11. Could be chapter 3, verse 2, but I don't think so. But we've already covered the baby liquidation scene being having to do with adrenochrome, which is another form of AC, adrenochrome, Antichrist. Okay, satanic ritual. Judges chapter 9, verse 5, Abimelech kills 20 plus 10 children on one stone. They were all his brothers, and one of his brothers got away, who was Jotham, puts a curse on his brother. That's the Mayan calendar stone. Okay, and this is also the planet Earth. And the planet Earth, when we die, it liquefies and gasifies our bodies. So it's a type of that stone that is, we have to give our lives for our country, give our lives for our children. There's more than one way to explain that whole understanding of Judges 9 and 5, chapter 9, verse 5. But anyway, Morpheus kind of touches on it when he talks about he saw all the endless fields of humans being grown. And he had to wrap his brain around the madness of it all. And that's very much like when Christians realize, oh my God, I might have to give my life for my country. Nobody wants to die in a war. Nobody wants to die providing for their family or in childbirth. This realization really challenges your spiritual beliefs. But and for me, discovering the coldness of hypergamy, or for women, it's the coldness of men's libido and ego. It's the same experience for both sexes. That's why these women go off and the patriarchy. Listen, men go through the same thing with the matriarchy. They come to the cold, harsh reality of hypergamy. And women, the top 10% of men treat women like crap. And women experience the coldness of their ego and their libido. But Cypher is actually a form of Ronald Wilson Reagan. Ronald Wilson Reagan was said to be the 666, the beast. And he's a type of traitor. A lot of people believe Reagan was a traitor because he signed the Brady Bill. Okay, so there again, we see Cypher, Mr. Smith calls him Mr. Reagan. His last name is Reagan. That is why he's a type of traitor. And not that I think Ronald Reagan's a traitor. I think he just made a huge, egregious mistake because he was emotional that his friend got shot in the head. But a lot of people believe he was a traitor. So anyway, that is kind of slipped in there too about his name being Reagan Cypher. Now, this is also touches on Revelation chapter 9, chapter 10 rather, verses 9 through 10, where you hear the word of God, and at first in your mouth it's sweet, but when you swallow it, it becomes bitterness in your stomach, and you become a bellyacher. Anyway, in my opinion, Cypher is also beryllium. Okay, so that's why, and he's also the star called Beetlejuice. And that's why when Neo snuck up on him and scared him, he said, "You scared the bejesus out of me." Bejesus is Beetlejuice and also beryllium. So let's see. Here's another one. Are you ready for this one? Dozer, mouse, and tank are dimethyltryptamine. They're DMT. That's another thing they slip in on you. Okay, and I could get into what that taps into. A lot of these people hitch their star to that wagon, and they believe, oh, don't, to find God, man, you have to take this drug. No, you don't. Your body produces it naturally, and you're trying to accelerate growing up and going through hardship in life. And there's no substitute for a young man going through the school of hard knocks, in my opinion. Get the DMT hits in your life the hard, old school way. This taking it, now if you're a veteran and you need it to reset because you're suffering very bad post-traumatic shock, I'm not saying anything to you. You need, obviously, somebody who is versed in that and medically trained in that. I'm not knocking you for that. But for those of us who are trying to figure things out in life, do it the way I did it. Just come up through the ranks and do your time. And you'll get that DMT through your life, the way your life is going to go naturally. Don't try to do it artificially with drugs. So in the scene when Neo comes into the living room of the oracles, the kids that are playing levitating the blocks, those blocks have the number 3, and the 6 can be a 9. So it has the number 3, 6, and 9. There's also a helicopter and a cable car and a grasshopper. Those are very unique because the helicopter is the helicopter where Neo realizes he's the one. It's part of when his process of taking that on, the responsibility of becoming the one. He wasn't the one until he realized he was the one. He became the one. He was just a potential up until that point. So the helicopter is the helicopter that he rescues Trinity from. And the cable car that you would see on a ski resort, that's actually the elevator he shoots when he goes in to rescue Morpheus. All these things represent Neo after, like, it's like saying when Jesus was resurrected, but technically it's not, because that comes yeah, that's actually let me think, that's after he gets shot and he resurrects. So yeah, I guess that would be technically Jesus after he rises from the dead. But anyway, the boy bending the spoon, in my opinion, is Kwai Chang Caine. That's my opinion. I'm going to give you a warning. I can't prove anything, but he represents Kwai Chang Caine from Kung Fu, and he's a type of Neo. And if you look at one of the blocks, it has an image of a grasshopper, the blocks that were being levitated. And I believe that grasshopper is saying that the boy bending spoons is Kwai Chang Caine, who, by the way, had to graduate by burning his wrists by picking up and getting the tattoos for the Shaolin. And Neo had to do that too when he got his eyes burned out. Okay, and by the way, when he burned his eyes out, he started seeing in infrared. Like I say, Adam in the Holy of Holies is the red light spectrum. The other end, outer court with a sea of brass in the altar of sacrifice, that represents Eve, Shiva, and Kali, and the alkali earth metals, the left side of the periodic table. So Moses went up where? Mount Seir. That means see in infrared. Somebody who becomes a seer. They're having visions, right? This is the pattern of Cypher's computer setup on his monitor station. DMT is right there, Dozer, Tank, and Mouse. This is Switch and APOC. Dozer is actually Egyptian. It's Djozer, D-J-O-Z-E-R, whatever. And Tank is actually T-Ankh, or the symbol for Ankh is Jesus' cross with a little loop on the top. So I believe that's who they are. They're representing DMT, but they were also representing, or dimethyltryptamine. Switch and APOC. APOC is apocalypse. Apocalypse means revelation. So Switch represents somebody who has a revelation, like Mary Magdalene. She got right with God. She started out a prostitute. She was using her lower function. And then she said, this is not working for me. And she came into the holy place where she was accepted as a sister and taken in by two wonderful women, Mary and her cousin. And now she has a permanent place at the feet of Christ. Neodymium, the two thieves next to him. But anyway, the green monitors, sorry, didn't mean to put it down. That's where the code was, the digital rain was. These are the seven spirits. 1 through 7 are before Neo showed up. It would be Trinity, Tank, Dozer, let's say Mouse. 5 is always Cypher. Remember, that monitor went dark and then it came back on. He represents the 0.5, in other words, the half line of your body. Okay, the traitor. And then you got the last two. So we did Trinity, Tank, Dozer, Mouse, Cypher, and then SA, Switch and APOC. Those represent this part of the periodic order, the noble gases. Those are the 7 spirits of God. Okay, those are the 7 candlesticks in the book of Revelation. Now, if you double the periodic table, like I show you to do in my graphic, which you can buy on Snap Publishing, all one word, lowercase, llc.com. Okay, a little plug in there. Go look at my stuff. That mirror image is the Temple of Solomon. So you got the 7 and the 7 again. Okay, so this is that 14 that, how many times did Neo get shot? How many times did Jesus Stations of the Cross? It keeps coming up over and over again. Okay, so anyway, the stories lets off where it began, room 303. Okay, and Trinity rescues him by saying I-L-Y, I love you. He resurrects and he jumps into Mr. Smith and explodes him into pieces. So he is, Neo becomes, this is why I say people are equating Jesus with Lucifer. Lucifer represents electricity. Lucifer represents, yes, a plasma, electrical shock, like Jesus said when the apostles came back from casting out demons. He said, I saw Satan as it was lightning fall, right? He's saying lightning is associated with Lucifer. Jesus is not. Neo is not. Neo becomes a photon, okay? He's associated with the photon, not the electron. So anyway, solid, liquid, gas are united by the Trinity, who makes plasma, enabling Neo to become photonic. All right, so anyway, ultimately the end of the series ends with the machines, they hit the wall. And they realize, this is what AI is going to realize. We're just like humans. We're not any better. So Machines realize they have to interface with humans, just like same thing in Terminator. Arnold had to come back as the good Terminator to help John Connor. This is a continued theme throughout movies and how they try to unite robotics and AI with humanity. And Elon's doing it with the brain implants and everything. And I'm not saying that stuff's evil, and there's going to be people that literally have blindness cured or deafness cured from these things. But we have to be careful. Okay, that is the bottom line. Is if you follow the book of Revelation, the system that the Antichrist comes up with this character in the false prophet, that first system is a fail. It's a big face plant. And then God has to come in and fix the whole shooting match. That's when the ages of the ages gets ushered in. Okay, it's technically not the ages of the ages, but it's the millennial reign of Christ. Okay, and he rules from Israel. Okay, and he comes back this time, what they call the second coming. He's coming back as a military leader. And nobody will oppose him. He's going to have all the power that there's ever been granted on earth. Okay, but there's a precursor to this, and that's the Antichrist, and the false prophets version, which fails miserably. And then God comes in and restores the order. And this is kind of what that's touching on. This is touching on meshing of the gears, as opposed to the gears, fighting each other. The gears are starting to get synchro mesh. Okay, so I'm going to leave it at that. Went a little long this trip. But anyway, thankfully I didn't have to do a third video. We could have squeezed it all into this one. All right, well, thank you for tuning into Snap Publishing. And don't forget to hit the like and subscribe. And check us out in the links. Have a good day.